Hey guys, hope you're all having a great week. Today's topic, I was going to talk about something else, but I was posting in one of my comment section on one of my videos, and I just happened to make this comment, so I decided to make a video about it just because it's kind of funny. And the topic was, or is, could a BJJ blue belt beat a prime Mike Tyson? So one more time, the topic is, could a BJJ blue belt beat a prime Mike Tyson? Just so you can kind of figure out where this came from, I didn't make this up, but it's a saying that used to be on all the MMA forums back in the day. It was just kind of a joke, when people were just trolling, like, yeah, BJJ blue belt could beat Mike Tyson or like a blue or a gorilla or a pit bull or something crazy like that. So just like on these MMA forums, they would just say that as like, man, that if you're a blue belt, you can do all this crazy stuff. And I don't know if it's true or not, but I just thought it was really funny. So I believe the that saying that a blue belt could beat Mike Tyson comes from Rorion Gracie. I think he did like a quote. He was interviewed and he just quoted that a blue belt could beat in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu could beat Mike Tyson. And this was back during like the early 90s when those first couple of UFCs were coming out, and you had Royce Gracie just kind of fighting all these other martial artists. So if you guys who don't know who Rorion Gracie is, he's the father of Henner and Rorion. Those are the brothers that do the Gracie breakdowns. And so Rorion, he was actually, very instrumental behind bringing the first UFC to the US, and just he's we have to thank him for making that popular. So yeah, Horiani made that quote, and it was really more of a marketing ploy just to promote jiu-jitsu, and even just the whole idea of the UFC. If you look back at it, it was pretty much to just promote jiu-jitsu, and that's why they picked Hoist. Hoist was he didn't really stand out. He didn't look very strong or scary. He wasn't very imposing. He looked like some skinny, lanky dude that would just get torn apart in these fights. But he went on to win, I think, the first two or three championships. And back then it was more of a tournament style, so it wasn't just one fight and then you're done. You had to beat a lot of other guys in one night to win. And it was just a different period. And I believe Mike Tyson later said that he was asked that question like, "Hey, would you be able to beat Royce Gracie?" And during that time period, Tyson didn't really know anything. Even he was kind of humble and saying that he probably would not do very well in those first UFCs. He probably wouldn't be prepared to take on Royce Gracie. And I think that's kind of where that joke really comes from. It's just jiu-jitsu blue belt, especially back then, would have been something just no one was really prepared for. No one really had an idea of what the ground game was, outside of judo. But even back then, the judo players didn't really do as much groundwork or newaza, as they say. So everyone was just out of their element fighting a jiu-jitsu competitor, especially one as good as Hoist. So I know some people are going to say, hey, but there's no way a BJJ blue belt could beat a good striker with good distance management. And that's true. Like if the striker has good distance management and can finish the jiu-jitsu blue belt before he closes the distance, then I mean there's a good chance if you have a high level striker, it's going to be hard to do pretty much anything on them. Um, but you also have to think about the fact that the average person, I'm not even talking about like a high level athlete, but the average person on the street really isn't good at or above average at anything. They're probably going to be out of shape, they're probably going to be overweight. And so even if they're strong for a few seconds, they're just not conditioned. They're going to gas out very quickly, especially in like a high stress, high adrenaline kind of situation. And so, when you train jujitsu, you're prepared to handle that adrenaline. You're prepared to handle just bursting of explosive energy, especially for a few minutes, because we train so much, we train so hard. Every class we're training, multiple rounds with multiple training partners, and you can't really do that in a lot of martial arts. And I would even say like a good grappler, not just even jujitsu, but like a good wrestler or good judo player, or, anyone that really trains is going to be pretty hard to deal with. But just in this case, a jiu-jitsu person with, training, so a blue belt might be training for like a year or so. I think they will give most people a hard time in a self-defense or street altercation. And so, I'm talking about a prime Mike Tyson. So not Mike Tyson now, who hangs out with UFC fighters all the time, but Mike Tyson during the early '90s with just, no sprawl training and just boxing. Just his skill set that he had back then. I can't see that he would be prepared for, someone with a good grappling technique, and being able to clinch and take down from the clinch. I just don't see him being able to really deal with that. I mean, he would, however, be really hard to get really close to. But even Tyson, he wasn't really a distance fighter. He was more of a like closer range person. So I could definitely, you might get hurt a little bit or a lot going in, but once you close the distance, I don't really see how he would be able to get out of that range. I mean, it would be hard to take him down. He's a strong dude, but I just, he wouldn't have the knowledge. He would make a mistake. And we see this, well, those early UFCs, they had a lot of style matchups. So we saw this, you guys want to watch, it was Royce Gracie versus Art Jimerson. So Art Jimerson was the guy wearing a single boxing glove, and I guess he was going to punch Royce, but before he could even punch Royce and close the distance, Royce was able to shoot a double leg and take Art Jimerson down and go right into the mount. And then from the mount, he was able to finish the fight. And if you watch the fight, Royce didn't really even do anything from the mount. He just kind of just stayed. He just controlled the position. And Jimerson, you could tell he never was in that grappling position before, and he kind of used all his power and got kind of scared. He got claustrophobic in that position, and he just tapped out. And I actually see this a lot when I train with like newer people, when I get mount on them, and I try my best not to put too much pressure and too much weight on them, but just the simple fact of having an adult person on top of you, kind of controlling you in that position, is very hard to deal with. A lot of people, they get claustrophobic and they have to they have to stop when someone gets in mount position on them, without even trying to like attack them, just holding the mount position, and they're fighting, they're using all their energy to get out, but they can't get out, and they panic. So I could see the same thing happening to Mike Tyson. If he went against a really good blue belt, and I think a lot of in that early UFC, it really showed a lot of just what was effective. Because before that, people were watching all these martial arts movies like Bloodsport and all these kung fu movies, and people really believe that stuff. They can't tell fantasy from reality. So a lot of people, especially in those early '90s, they were waiting for like the Death Punch or the Dimmock. They wanted to see, ninjas and all this crazy stuff. But the UFC kind of proved what was effective and what really worked. And especially in those early UFCs, like it showed that grappling was a very strong art form. I mean, striking is very strong, but I think the grapplers, it will really surprise people. Like wrestling and jiu-jitsu really surprised a lot of people for its effectiveness. And if you think back, it's really about the training methodology. With grappling, you're able to train a lot harder. You can go a lot harder grappling than you can go, striking. If you go really hard in striking, you're probably going to get some brain damage eventually. But if you go really hard in grappling, of course, there the possibility of injuries. But you can train pretty hard, multiple times during a training session, multiple times per day, and you're still okay. Um, So, and just one major fact, something a lot of people don't realize, when we say, hey, BJJ blue belt could beat Mike Tyson, we're thinking more like the older school blue belts. So, like nowadays blue belts, they don't really focus a lot. I don't want to generalize, but just from the tournaments that I've been to and watched, most blue belts nowadays don't really focus too much on the groundwork or stand takedowns as much. Maybe the bigger guys do. Um, but it's just more of the focus is on the sport of jiu-jitsu. So how to like take how to pass the guard or how to berimbolo. Like I put money on most blue belts knowing how to berimbolo versus like do a double leg takedown. And that's kind of crazy. But like back in the day, just the focus of jiu-jitsu was a little bit different. A lot of practitioners, you'll see this if you look back and like you look at the history of jiu-jitsu. A lot of the jiu-jitsu practitioners, would compete in like challenge matches or like or fights between other academies with Val Tudo rules. And so, for my friends that don't know what Val Tudo is, it means anything goes. So it was the precursor to modern mixed martial arts. So you would have these guys, no gloves, just go out there and just beat each other down. And this was a normal part of jiu-jitsu. So like we have all these people that train jiu-jitsu, but would also go and compete in Ball Tudo. Um, you know, back in like man pre-UFC, that's what they did. They would fight in Ball Tudo or Vale Tudo, as some people say. And this was even in the U.S. So in Brazil, they were doing this, 70s and before, even during like Helio's time, they had Ball Tudo matches. But in the US, it was mostly like the 90s and the early 2000s. And I recall like just the generations before me, like one or two generations before me, like my instructor, he would fight in these no holds barred tournaments, and they'd be like in nowhere, Alabama, fighting in like a bar or something, and just these rednecks just fighting like jujitsu people and getting crushed. But that was kind of a part of just a part of that time frame where if you're really good at jiu-jitsu back in that time, you had to go prove and show that jiu-jitsu was effective against these street brawlers and fighters. And then I remember even as a white belt, like we did more striking training. So we would do like even as a white belt, they would put like these really big floppy old boxing gloves on us, and we had to like one person wore the boxing gloves, and then the other person had to like try to take down the person wearing boxing gloves. But of course, the person wearing boxing gloves trying to hit you. So you had to like we always trained like, all right, if you're in a real fight, the person trying to hit you, how to close the distance, how to take them down, and then we would work like some ground and pound situations where you're in your guard and the person is trying to hit you and you have to like defend yourself or get back up to your feet. So that was kind of like a more integrated part of jiu-jitsu that we don't really do as much now because there's more of a focus on just the sport. But back in the day, like there was always this element of, how to deal with striking, how to deal with other martial arts, how to protect yourself if someone's trying to hit you. So again, the question was, could a BJJ blue belt beat Mike Tyson? I think in during that time period, if you took Mike Tyson with just his skill set at the time in boxing, with no sprawl training, no grappling, no wrestling, I think he would not win a fight against a blue belt during that time period where the blue belt had good, striking training as well, striking defense training, and also just being able to close the distance and take the Mike down. And I mean, looking back at Hoist was not the most athletic person. He was not the best person at taking. He didn't have the best takedowns, but he was able to take down these strikers because they didn't have any base in grappling. So I think it would look exactly like Art Jimerson versus Hoist. Mike or Hoist or insert any blue belt that was really tough at the time. I think it would look very similar to that type of situation. So if you guys agree with me or disagree with me, it's cool. Let me know in the comment section. Of course, please give this video a like and subscribe. Until my next video, guys. Ciao.